The Australian Rail Track Corporation says it has reduced costs for rail users by up to 20% since it took control of the network between the east and west coasts of Australia, and it's hoped those savings will be replicated here in the Hunter. The doors of the company's northern New South Wales headquarters have been opened in Broadmeadow, marking a historic deal between the state and federal governments. It means the ARTC, which is partly owned by the Commonwealth, will manage the rail network, selling time slots to users, including coal trains and commuter services. And while there'll be hefty profits for the company, it'll also be dipping into its accounts to fund the upgrade of tracks, as well as the installation of new train controls, signals and communication technology.
In the Hunter Valley, we're specifically going to invest over $152 million to improve the capacity of the rail track to be able to carry in excess of 100 million gross tonne kilometres of coal and other traffic within the next 5 years.
In another boost for the region's rail network, it's expected to be just 8 weeks before the preferred tender is announced for the construction of an overpass at Hexham, which is aimed at reducing congestion on our tracks. Colleen West, NBN News. There have been no new cases of the respiratory virus at the Waratah facility since Monday, but health authorities say they're continuing to quarantine patients who display flu-like symptoms. 5 residents between the ages of 70 and 90 have died at the Bethel Aged Care facility in the past week, and 9 others have been hospitalised after falling seriously ill.
It's not an uncommon thing in wintertime to see a cluster of deaths in nursing homes. When influenza moves through a community, if it is influenza, it does generally take people who are very, very immune compromised and frail.
And while the virus is usually prevalent between the months of June and August, it's come a little late this year, with large numbers of people falling sick right across the state. All educational and medical institutions are being urged to watch out for symptoms, including coughs and fevers.
Anyone who has not got it within a week or so is probably immune and won't get it, so you expect to see these sort of things burn out within at least a week.
Tests are currently being carried out to confirm whether other viruses may have contributed to the deaths at the aged care centre. Access to the facility will remain restricted until at least next week. Staff are also taking precautionary measures, wearing masks, aprons and eye protection. Colleen West, NBN News.
Flying in from Adelaide overnight, 18-year-old Michael Fenwick reacquainted himself with the Argentine BMX track today. He's used to travelling though. In July he returned from the Netherlands with the World Junior Elite title, but this weekend he continues the rise from junior to senior ranks.
They're very fierce competitors, so and they've been at the elite level, which I'm looking at going to professionally, so that's what I mean by, they're the people that I want to be racing.
9-time national champion Luke Medill will provide the perfect benchmark at the unique 3-track classic that starts tomorrow at Tanambit. Riders then move to Lake Macquarie for a twilight meeting, with the final round on Sunday at Terrigal on the Central Coast, the home track for pro rider Daniel Johnston.
It's good to get feedback often with your track as well, just to change things here and there.
For Fenwick though, it's all about the competition.
Definitely the competitive streak comes out, and everyone, when that gate drops in the final, there's definitely no friends on the track,
With BMX soon to be in the Olympic Games, cross-country mountain biking already is, and a round of the State Series is on this weekend at Killingworth. Jim Callanan, NBN News. It's fair to say the bulk of the Hunters rugby fraternity doesn't hold fond memories of its previous experience in Sydney Club Rugby. Invited to play in 1995, the Newcastle Wildfires were dumped from the competition just 4 years later. Now, New South Wales Rugby appears to want them back, along with 3 other country-based teams.
At the moment they're looking at a concept to expand some geographic pools of teams, and Newcastle's in the mix.
The proposed model would split the current 12 Sydney grade teams into 2 pools, both joined by 2 country teams, to contest the Shoot Shield, a competition contested in the first half of the season when Super 12 players are unavailable.
But the principle is that if it gives us involvement into a better competition, an elite competition, and provides a pathway to our players, we'd be very, very interested.
He stressed much more information is still being sought and any inclusion could only be considered for 2006, while those who felt burnt after the wildfires experience may also have an input.
There'd probably be some scepticism about it, but it's an opportunity and we'll pursue the opportunity and then we'll make our decision when we know the detail.
Meanwhile, the Waratahs must beat the Wanderers tomorrow to keep their premiership defence on track in the elimination final.
Arsonists have been put on notice.
If you light a fire, you will be caught.
The National Parks and Wildlife, Police and Rural Fire Services are spending this weekend in the Wollamai National Park, an area high in fire danger.
Well, the National Parks region actually extends from the Hawkesbury River north to Newcastle and then west to the other side of Muswellbrook.
Called Operation Phoenix, the high visibility exercise is a sign of things to come. More patrols in local hotspots attempting to catch out arsonists. The fire combat agencies are also attempting to jump those communication hurdles that exist between each organisation.
We tend to just use slightly different terminology, which can be confusing in the heat of the moment.
Which brings us to this, a new communications bus used for the first time today, a radio centre liaising between the emergency services. And it works. Our news crew was part of a convoy which included officers from all sectors. Apparently, operation officials weren't notified of our entry into the exercise area. It's all part of the preparation process for what's expected to be a long, dry and anxious summer. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Reports of gunshots and a fight brought police from across Newcastle to the Chin Chen Street clubhouse. Officers discovered 2 men aged 31 suffering serious injuries. One had been shot in the leg. As the police investigation into the violence began, another 2 men, aged 45 and 48, sought medical help at the Mater Hospital, and again one had been shot in the leg. 24 hours after the brutality, police are still trying to discover what sparked it.
The investigation is moving quite quickly, but at the moment we're still piecing together really the story about what happened.
So far, 15 Nomads members from Newcastle and Western Sydney have been questioned by police. The Islington clubhouse also put under the spotlight.
Police have executed a search warrant on the premises last night. We have seized some items that are of interest to our investigation.
While the violence was contained to the clubhouse, Superintendent Shearer says the incident does concern her.
Any guns or firearms within a community is of great concern to us, but the solace that we can take with respect to this particular matter was it appears that it was a very targeted incident.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Tranquil enough on a weekday, only the scarred landscape illustrates damage the National Parks and Wildlife Service says dirt bike riders are doing to Newcastle's Glen Rock Reserve.
We've had a bit of an explosion, I suppose, of illegal trail bike activity, people cutting into areas, building new tracks and trails, just causing environmental damage to a number of our reserves.
While mountain bikes are permitted, people riding motorbikes in Glen Rock can be fined. However, rangers say it's nearly impossible to catch offenders. The damage is preventing areas such as old quarries to revegetate, along with soil erosion.
Particularly somewhere like Glen Rock where the soils are very unstable, they're just creating erosion, creating new tracks and trails, just opening up areas that should really be left to recover.
And Lake Macquarie Council is blaming trail bike riders for environmental damage and noise pollution around Jules Crossing, where Stage 4 of the Fernley track is set to be built.
You know, I think the powers that be have got to sit down and talk and say, right, we're going to set aside an area for you, go there, nowhere else.
Meantime, Council says the Fernley cycle track is ahead of schedule. Stage 2 between Whitebridge and Burwood Road is due to be completed before Christmas, with the entire track to be ready by 2008. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
For the best part of 11 months, Brandon Mann has been waiting to do just this, play ball. After a longer than expected recovery from a broken bone in his foot, he got to tread the boards for the first time in New Zealand at the weekend, and now it's literally one step at a time.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I suppose a lot of it is confidence, but as I said, it's going to be something physically I just have to manage throughout the season. I'll gradually get better.
His coach obviously has faith, naming Mann co-captain with Ben Melmoth, who, along with Geordie Cullen, will miss training all week. As for finding a replacement import player, Coach Hurley could know as early as tonight, with 2 players in the mix.
Both of them are around 6'5" guards, but very, very strong, very good defenders.
As one sport gears up, another is winding down, and overnight it was awards night for Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Union. And for 2 teams not featuring in the final series, University and Lake Macquarie still had plenty to cheer about. Uni second rower Taff Moyo joining the Lakes' Blake Patterson as joint Anderson medal winners, along with Wanderers 5'8" Greg Thompson, in a unique 3-way tie for the top gong. For Thompson, he hopes it's the start of things to come, with his team to meet Eastern Districts in the decider on Saturday.
It's one of Newcastle's most prominent landmarks, the Captain James Cook Memorial Fountain in Civic Park. But like many of our historic features, it's fallen into a state of disrepair and is now clogged with rubbish. Last night, Newcastle City Councillors agreed to fund an $830,000 upgrade, including a new filtration and pump system. And while that seems exorbitant, Mayor John Tate says it'll be money well spent.
It'd buy a lot of footpath, but Newcastle is one of the major cities in Australia. If you go to other cities and you see fountains and parks and all of the sorts of things that we like to see, this city deserves that sort of quality in its public spaces.
Meanwhile, the saga over Merewether's surf house continues. Last night, Councillor Helen O'Neill put up a notice of motion in the hope of speeding up a decision on the derelict heritage building.
Over the three previous councils, this issue has raised its head. Decisions have been made but probably not followed through. I think it's time now to take some action.
It's hoped Council will soon decide between two main options, calling for further expressions of interest or knocking it down. A public briefing will be held next month. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Every Thursday, Sensei Peter Overecker takes this special karate class. Some of his students get through it with help from a carer. Others prefer to do it all on their own. All of these students have some sort of brain injury. The controlled movements of the sport help to improve their balance, coordination, muscle strength and concentration.
Sometimes you've got to push them. They get their good days and their bad days as anybody else. But I think they're a real role model to people.
One such role model is John Jenkins. 2 years ago, with little if any control of his left leg, he got around in a wheelchair. But 12 months of karate has helped to regain his independence.
There was at one stage there I couldn't get on a bus. I didn't know how to get anywhere. Now I walk here on my own. I can walk anywhere up to 6 miles a day.
The enthusiasm these students show is inspirational, especially when you consider most people would put such a challenge in the too hard basket.
I think the biggest part is having an issue of not negative, being positive the whole time. And the more positive you get, the more you get out of it.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. It's a week-long festival celebrating music in Newcastle, and today's focus was on nurturing and encouraging our budding musicians to help them launch their careers. The Newcastle Music Week Expo and workshops provided the perfect opportunity for those seeking a career in music to mix it with the professionals. The guest speakers included Tyrone Noonan, lead singer of the ARIA award-winning Brisbane band George. Successful Melbourne band Sender, who recently signed with Sony, also gave many of the young musos hope by passing on advice about breaking into the industry.
I suppose our biggest step was a music competition called Music Oz, which was run out of Wollongong, and through that we sort of just got in touch with the record company and sort of all went from there really.
Earlier this week, Derby Street added music to its menu, with the public enjoying the talents of local musicians as part of the festival. The soulful acoustic sounds drifted throughout all the restaurants and cafes, and if you missed it, there'll be more tonight in Beaumont Street. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It's become a blot on the Newcastle coastal landscape, a massive 20-tonne boulder. It's blocked the scenic Shortland Esplanade, the Bathers Way tourist walk and the main access to the bogey hole for the last 2 years. Along with the unsightly and dilapidated surf house, some residents are questioning why it's taking Newcastle City Council so long to take action on these coastal eyesores.
It's about time they definitely did something with that, that's been too long coming now.
Oh, it'd be nice if it was moved, because then you could actually walk up there rather than walking the whole way around.
Well, it's certainly one of the most scenic spots, and it would be lovely to see it reopened one day.
The Lord Mayor says council is doing its best to speed up the removal of the boulder.
It's certainly frustrating at the moment to see that boulder sitting there, because that's what's in the public's eye. And if people say, well, why can't you shift it? Well, we can shift it very easily. That's not the problem. It's the cliff face we need to deal with.
Council staff have completed a study of the options for stabilising the cliff face, but councillors must now make a decision on which option to choose. And once that's decided, it could take a long time to complete the work on the cliff, meaning the esplanade could be closed for many more months to come. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Amazing scenes in Townsville this week as the whole of North Queensland get behind the Cowboys in their quest to advance into Week 3 of the final series. The NRL has done a great job in bringing the match scheduled for Sydney to Townsville, and the game itself has a unique challenge for the Cowboys. They've never defeated the Broncos before, and I'm tipping that they can create history. Now, the Cowboys' performance against the Bulldogs last week was tough and disciplined, and their little men Matt Bowen and Ty Williams just absolutely chopped up the Bulldogs in the middle of the ruck. Now, I'm looking forward to the clash between the front rowers, two genuine big men in Paul Rahihi and Shane Webke. Now, Paul Rahihi has been in outstanding form, and he is the game's #1 offloader. Now, make sure you catch all the action. It's tomorrow night at 7:45 p.m, live and exclusive on NBN. And on Sunday afternoon at 3:45, Aussie Stadium, the Storm take on the Bulldogs. Now, the main concern for the Bulldogs is the injury to Braithen Astor. He received a sternum injury last week. He trained today without doing any contact work, and he's a 50-50 chance of playing the game. Now, both teams have plenty of strike players. The two to watch out for are the Storm's Matt King, and for the Bulldogs, Willie Tonga, who's made more line breaks than anyone else in the NRL. He is really playing outstanding football. I think the Bulldogs can bounce back, but if Anasta doesn't play, there is a definite chance of an upset. Enjoy the final series. It's going to be a great one. I'll see you all next week.
The club is taking under its wing several 14 to 16-year-olds, tempering their exuberance and putting them through a comprehensive 3-stage course where control and not speed is the essence, at first anyway.
We show them how to drive that piece of road and different points to steer for. Then we go into gear changing and braking. When they get to level 3, we will be expecting them to be able to lock the brakes and still control the car.
Wayne Goodwin is one youngster benefiting from the course. The 16-year-old from Cardiff South is an L-plater on public roads. Here, Wayne's a first-timer, but picking up the ideas.
Think about what you do before you do it and take every step as it comes.
And that's it in a nutshell. Speed can come later, but only when you know the rudiments and then only on the racetrack.
Speed is not the essence. Speed is certainly not a thing that we intend to teach the children. But they do develop it, and some of our children, some of our successful, more successful juniors have gone on to compete in open competition.
A waterspout off Newcastle Beach was the first indication that a change in the weather was coming our way, but no one would have imagined that hail drifts up to 60 centimetres deep would be the calling card of the storm that targeted the Newcastle University campus.
It's absolutely unbelievable, the level of ice that fell here. It was as if it just was picked out.
Gutters on the Forum Sports and Aquatic Centre just couldn't cope with 123 millimetres of rain and hail. Rather than aerobic moves, Forum staff were today engaged in a more domestic workout with the centre closed to the public.
So our staff will clean up and get the water all out of the building, and then use heaters and so on and so forth to then get the place spick and span, hopefully for tomorrow.
Across campus, Monday was also a washout for Newcastle University staff and students. Many commenced the return bus journey not long after their arrival at the institution. Another storm victim was the nearby Birmingham Gardens ambulance station, flooded when the deluge flowed through the front doors. And this floodwater from Ironbark Creek is an indication of why the SES has been kept busy with leaking roofs, mostly around the Wallsend area.
104 jobs in the Newcastle area, and most of those were damaged roofs, flooding ceilings.
As a result of last night's storm, the SES has renewed its annual warning to residents to clean out gutters and drains so they can handle severe weather events, with the storm season only into its third week. Gary Blair, NBN News.
At last count, 170,000 Australians have dementia. That will expand to 500,000 by 2040 if the syndrome keeps growing at the same rate. Mental health workers have met in the Hunter this week, promoting awareness of symptoms that include reduction of memory and cognitive function, while also noting factors that may help prevention.
But also it's clear that keeping your brain active, learning new skills, keeping yourself educated in older age and keeping yourself socially active also can help to reduce the risk of dementia.
But of course it's not just sufferers who are profoundly affected. Thelma Robinson is just one carer. She was on call 24 hours a day while her mother, Stella, suffered dementia for 5 years.
At first I was so close to a mental home it wasn't funny.
Stella died 3 weeks ago, aged 93. While at times she didn't recognise her daughter, Thelma holds cherished memories of being a carer.
She looked straight up at me and she said, "I will always love you." And to me that was my blessing. They say you will be blessed doing this job, and that was my blessing.
Meantime, Hunter researchers are leading the way in early dementia detection. Dr. Peter Schofield has been trialling a new cognitive screening test, a simple question and answer procedure which is hoped will be used within a year to recognise the early symptoms.
It's a very efficient way of conducting a fairly sensitive assessment of somebody's memory and concentration performance.
Todd Nardi, NBN News. For an example of wetlands affected by development, you couldn't find better than the Wetland Centre at Shortland. It was a rubbish tip and a sporting fields before being returned to its original state and is now listed as being of international significance. Today it was the venue for a national wetlands conference, certainly not a dry issue for those educating local councils and government departments about urban and industrial developments in close proximity to wetlands.
There are better ways of actually managing those sorts of developments to have a lesser impact on wetlands.
No longer called swamps, wetlands are now recognised for the role they play in the environment.
The wetland is also a major organ in our landscape. It processes water through the landscape, it collects water, it cleanses it.
Recently, Newcastle City Council voted against land at Minmi, known as Tank Paddock, from being rezoned to allow for residential development due to its proximity to wetlands, and developers can expect to keep facing tight restrictions on such land.
The aesthetic value, the visual value of those wetlands to things like industrial runoff and discharge, stormwater inputs.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
The gallery was overflowing at Newcastle City Council chambers last night as the fight against a proposed methadone clinic for this site at Mayfield continues. Hundreds of concerned Mayfield residents and business people had hoped the issue was put to bed, but it's far from over.
No, it almost would appear that it's just about to start.
4 months ago, the Health Department pledged it would not grant the developer Australian Polyclinics a licence to supply methadone. But even so, the developer is pushing on, submitting a development application to Council in the hope it will be approved and the state government will then change its mind. Those opposed say the site is not suitable for a clinic as it's in the heart of Mayfield's retail centre.
It's an inappropriate site for such a development. It brings a lot of associated problems because of the concentration of people with drug dependency.
The developers say there's an unmet need in Mayfield for a methadone clinic, but local pharmacist John Dixon, who addressed Council last night, says he already provides an underutilised service. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Hey folks. Now this is very important.
Would have been better for you to actually be here when the decision was handed down?
I've been talking about it all day. Happy to talk about it again now.
You don't think the ICA will be upset that you've disappeared?
Don't be silly.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Okay. Thanks.
In daylight, in a suburban car park and with children playing just a stone's throw away, a junkie prepares for his daily hit.
You know, there must be hundreds of syringes lying around here, but where do they come from?
They come from people like me, but other people that don't care.
Not fussed by the presence of a news crew, the man continues to load the syringe and in a matter of seconds turns his back, injects himself, then leaves. This time he takes the needle and related material with him, but potentially hundreds of thousands of injecting drug users don't. In the 12 months ending in June 2003, almost 1.7 million needles and syringes were issued through the Needle and Syringe program in northern New South Wales alone. Drug and alcohol health experts haven't sugarcoated the issue, but do insist the program is a vital service.
Overall in the state, we would not be imagining that more than 60% actually come back.
During that same period, some 671,000 needles and syringes were also dispensed from local pharmacies.
So that could mean, yes, that there are significant thousands, if not even millions of syringes lying around having been disposed of inappropriately.
If the user was infected with HIV, hepatitis B or C and did leave their needle in a public space, it could prove life-changing for anyone who came into contact with it. And although there are several myths surrounding needle stick injuries, nevertheless, the risk of infection is very real.
With HIV, once the blood is dried in the needle, it wouldn't last very long at all, a matter of hours to days. With hepatitis C and hepatitis B, it's much longer, so it may be months to years that the virus remains viable.
For those injecting drug users who have been doing so for over 15 years, the AIDS Council provides free, clean equipment packs of 3, 5, even 10 syringes to reduce the risks of those known diseases from spreading any further. Even so, that's more needles which could ultimately work their way into the public arena. Later in the week, the myths behind needle stick injuries, but tomorrow night, the lengths some addicts go to when disposing of their used syringes. This footage was commissioned by the United Services Union, an organisation which represents a number of employees throughout various industries, including council workers. Taken from inside a public toilet block, it shows hundreds upon hundreds of syringes disposed of in some of the most inappropriate places, making the job that much harder for council cleaning staff.
It is an occupational hazard. The councils do work to try and remove the hazard by identifying the risks associated with the syringes, but unfortunately you can't remove all the risks.
Newcastle Council cleaner Peter is one of the lucky ones. Unlike his colleagues, he's yet to suffer a needle stick injury while on his daily cleaning round, a job which requires him to go to lengths many of us would never consider.
If a syringe is placed in an S-bin in the toilet, unfortunately the cleaner hasn't got the tools to clean that out, and unfortunately they need to use their hands on occasions, which places them at risk.
On our beaches, it's an early start for those working the council tractors, sweeping the sand for anything from chip packets, apple cores, and of course, syringes. But according to beach custodians, it's not the place it once was. Needle sticks no longer a big concern on these sandy shores except on rainy days. Even then, the chances of a syringe washing up on the beach transported there by stormwater are slim to say the least.
Having a beach cleaning machine like that sieves the beaches every day. Also a redirection of the stormwater system here, and we have a drainage pit and purification pit.
Tomorrow night, the longest 6 months in this family's life as they wait for results after their son sustained a needle stick injury. Ten-year-old William Wright carries no physical scars, but the sport-mad Newcastle boy will never forget that December day when his curiosity got the better of him. It was in this suburban park William picked up a syringe using his right hand, completely unaware of what was about to unfold.
And the lid fell off, and then I tried putting it back on, and then it stuck me.
That was 9 months ago. 6 of those, however, were spent waiting for results, testing for hepatitis and HIV. There was nothing William's family could do but think happy thoughts, hoping their nightmare doesn't take a tragic turn.
He became very scared, and it made me even more worried, and his mother was very scared as well. Same as his brothers and sisters, because they all know the dangers of needles. Yeah, it was pretty emotional.
Thankfully, the odds were in William's favour. He was eventually given the all clear. But his father Bill says those panic-stricken 6 months could have been avoided if only the injecting drug user had acted responsibly.
Well, I'd like them to put them in disposal bins or return them to where they got them from. Yeah, that's pretty much it. They get them for nothing. And they should just return them. you know, maybe their child or their cousin might get needle sticked as well, you know. So.
There's a dedicated hotline for the clean-up of these syringes conducted by New South Wales Health. If you come across a needle in a public area, if possible, contact the service before attempting to clean it up. William thought he was doing the right thing by picking up that syringe, a job better left to the experts. Tomorrow night, a recovering drug addict speaks of her trip to hell and back.
Heroin was my drug of choice from the age of 12 years old.
Tira is a recovering heroin addict who contracted hepatitis C. Most of her 38 years in some shape or form have been drug-related.
Heroin was my drug of choice from the age of 12 years old, and other drugs from the age of 8. Yes. I was brought up in a basic sort of drug-using culture. My mother also used.
As did her sister, they both died of overdoses. With a young family and facing the prospect of bringing her children up with no help, Tira says it was then she decided to change her ways. That was a decade ago, an era when she was shooting up as many as 3 times a day and when syringes were called a fit, gun or machine.
Back then I thought I wouldn't make it. It was very, very hard, but I just took it a day at a time basically, and white-knuckled it. Did everything in my power not to go back to that lifestyle.
A lifestyle with no room for rational thought. Tira says in her early days of using, acting responsibly when disposing of used syringes wasn't a priority. Did she think of the consequences, the public health risk, the innocent, those who paid for someone else's mistake? Now, as she walks that path to recovery, after years on methadone and now a tablet to help ease her addiction, Tira has just a few weeks left before she's physically kicked the habit, several worlds away from the person she once was.
I look at it this way, 8 years out of my life to build towards where I am today, the person I am today, is a very little price to pay compared to all those years of horror and degradation and humiliation that I lived and breathed and allowed to happen to myself.
No turning back?
No turning back. No turning back.
In our final look at needle stick injuries tomorrow night, dissolving those myths and a clinical way forward. Gold Coast company Medigard is among a handful of firms nationwide developing syringes which retract after being used, a feature that appeals to health workers.
It's a unique design, it's a vacuum retractable syringe as opposed to the others of our competitors who have spring or more cumbersome sheath type mechanisms. So it is new and it's novel and they like it.
Simplicity is what we're aiming at. So most of the other competitive devices have up to 10 or 12 parts. Whereas our device has 4 components and we're aiming at even simplifying that. So we're sort of doing very leading edge plastic research so that we have minimum number of components to manufacture and assemble.
Developed as a blood collection device, the retractable syringe isn't being rushed into drug programs. Despite its obvious benefits in preventing the spread of hepatitis and HIV, it could create more problems for injecting drug users.
It would be of no use to a seasoned user who has a vein issue, meaning they find it hard to access a vein.
Whatever the for and against argument is, the syringe in its most simple form will always stir emotions. Be it a test or vaccination, this small and potentially life-saving instrument has been known to trigger tantrums, cold sweats, and could be a reason why so many don't donate blood. What makes it more intimidating when found discarded in a public place is the syringe's unknown quantity. Where has it been and what infections is it harbouring?
This set of material lying around is probably not a lot more likely to cause harm to their children than the empty beer bottles we see lying around in every suburb every day of the week. If a child jumps on that and cuts their foot, they're going to need more medical attention than somebody who steps on a needle inadvertently.
If that was to happen, however, the risk of infection is very low. In fact, health officials claim there's been no reported cases of hepatitis C being transmitted in this country after someone came into contact with a discarded needle in the public setting. The risk of HIV is even lower. Drug and alcohol experts maintain the only way forward is for the public to keep needle stick injuries in context, compared to, say, other criminal activities like drink driving.
And we don't see quite the same outrage about that as we do about a single needle lying around. And yet the person at a blood alcohol level of 0.1 can kill you far more effectively driving their car than one dirty needle can.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
The outbreak of influenza A that claimed 10 lives at the Bethel nursing home at Waratah has now spread to at least 4 other aged care facilities in the region. A 5th home at Shoal Bay has yet to be officially confirmed as a site of the influenza virus, but illness has hit hard in the past 10 days.
There have been now a total of 7 people who've died with a respiratory illness at some stage preceding their death. As I say, no confirmed influenza there, so we don't yet know what the agent is in that particular aged care facility.
Health officials are awaiting test results for the Bay home, which has been quarantined.
In all of those, there are high-level infection control procedures in place. In all cases, they're closed to further admission, so there won't be new people coming into those until the infection has settled down.
Hunter Health says it's possible that more lives will be lost.
There's a lot of influenza out in the community generally, so general practitioners are seeing a lot of people, as are emergency department staff, who are presenting with an illness consistent with influenza. So flu in the community, and it's showing up amongst the most vulnerable groups, and that's aged care facilities, folk who are older, of course.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
I got the flick pass in the middle 80s and I thought that was the end of it, but then Channel 9 asked me to come back and take up the football for them, and it's been just an absolute dream come true the last 14 years or so.
It's amazing, it's so cool, it makes me feel really special.
There's nothing like having world champion next to your name, and I just, you know, in the next couple of days, it's really going to hit home, I guess.
There was a pursuit several days previously with this particular motor vehicle. The police terminated it as a result of safety reasons.
With spotlights, music and a cheering crowd, last night's Speed City exhibition at Honeysuckle was more like a catwalk show. Standard vehicles replaced the likes of Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss, and sparkling paint, chrome wheels and spoilers acted as designer outfits. Hundreds came for a look, with the crowd as diverse as the cars themselves, and the positive publicity is well timed, given Council is considering restricting access to the modified cars playground, the foreshore.
People think they're a traffic hazard and all this kind of stuff, but there's a generational thing happening here. For years people have gone down to the foreshore and hung out there. This culture's been there for 20 odd years, if more.
Senior police are supporting the city's traffic committee proposal of installing boom gates to clear traffic congestion on Wharf Road. But the car owners think keeping them out will cause more problems than it will solve.
I think it's ridiculous. It's just going to push everybody elsewhere. Every city, every town, they all cruise to the beach.
They're restricting the families that want to go for picnics. They're restricting people who want to go for candlelit dinners on the beach. They're taking it away from the public, not only us.
A petition opposing the plans is circulating the foreshore, and hundreds of signatures have been collected already today. It will be presented to Council tomorrow. Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
like I said before, I've worked my life to try and become world champion and to try and be the best speedway rider I can be. And I've been close the last few years, granted, but there's nothing like having world champion next to your name. And I just, in the next couple of days, it's really going to hit home, I guess.
Verdensmester her I vikingskipet, altså.
It's been a fantastic series this year, and we've got to give full credit to John Postlethwaite and BS. Second place, Tony Rickardson, and third place, Greg Hancock.
It was 58 degrees on track at Qatar, and after requiring a drip to rehydrate from qualifying, Casey Stoner was lucky to even start the 125cc race. He did, and blasted from 4th to 1st by the end of the straight. Stretching the lead with Andrea Dovizioso, the pair were hunted down, and as the front pack doubled, Stoner slipped to 3rd. Losing positions and speed, Stoner's race ended on lap 9. It was the latter. After breaking his rear brake lever on lap 2, the engine seized, making it 6 consecutive races he's failed to earn a point. Closer to home, and it was the state round of the Newcastle Matara hill climb at King Edward Park. Covering a range of makes and models, the best drivers were clocking the picturesque journey a blink over 33 seconds. And spectators liked every one of those of John Collins's JWS Le Mans style coupe. The hill climb continues tomorrow. Qualifying fastest for the season-ending race couldn't have come at a better time for Brock Parks, who was told by team bosses to look elsewhere for a ride next season. Kevin Curtin already has one with Yamaha, but his luckless season ended on the first corner of the last race.
We have a rider down.
Somehow, fellow riders avoided him as he spun clear and escaped injury. A welcome sight for family waiting in the pits. It left Brock, though, to muscle his way in front and lead the way from his 10-Carter teammate, Carl Muggeridge. It stayed that way for 15 of the 22 laps, with Parks desperate to hold out his world champion countryman and score his first Supersport win. But after sizing up the move over the final laps, Muggeridge went for it with only a few corners left on the last trip around the Magny-Cours circuit. Parks forced to settle for runner-up for the 3rd time this series and 2nd overall. Curtin ending the series in 6th.
Canberra wants work to start next year on 3 new destroyers for the Royal Australian Navy. While the $6 billion contract is likely to go to South Australia or Melbourne, there is confidence that spin-offs will flow to the Hunter. Forjax says it already has arrangements in place that could see some of the steel hull modules manufactured at its operation at Tomago. Hunter Defence Committee Chairman Bob Cowan says there'll be plenty of work to share.
This is a very large project. And even for the largest companies in Australia, the likes of Subcorp and Tenex, maybe they would have to join together to form a consortium that would be big enough to support this type of project.
Forjax and Australian Defence Industries have teamed up in a current bid for $2 billion worth of other work for the Navy and hope that some business from the destroyer deal will come to Newcastle.
What we're excited about, the government is saying that they will put a percentage of money aside for upskilling. Now, we all know over the last couple of years, our skilling levels have dropped down, the number of apprenticeships and the number of tradesmen. And the project is large. We can afford to put more money into the schools and to upgrade and upskill people.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.